Okay, we're in Pirkei Mishnah Yud, chapter 5, Mishnah 10. We've now spoken about things that are associated with the number 10. We've spoken about things that are associated with the number 7. So we're up to the section where we'll deal with things associated with the number 4. And the very first thing, there are many things associated with the number 4. The first thing we're going to look at is Arba Midos Adam. There are 4 kinds of people. 4 kinds of people. Pause for a second. If you were to classify human beings in 4 groups, how would you decide what those 4 groups are? I mean, you could divide people based on intellect, on behavior, on midos. There's so many things. So look how this Mishnah does it. Ha'omer, if you have a person who says, Sheli, Sheli, what is mine is mine, Vesheloch, Sheloch, and what is yours, Zoi mida beinonis. That is a very average type of personality, an average trait. Okay, so first question that should pop up in your head is average good or bad or acceptable? Like, what do we mean when we say this is average? It's not normal, right? Average is normal, so you think, right? A normal person. What's mine is mine, what's yours is yours. You know what that means? I think I don't know, we can debate this, but it sounds almost like capitalism. What's mine is mine, so yours is yours. I worked hard, that's how I landed up having these things. You either did or didn't work hard, so that's why you have what you have. All right, what's mine is mine, I achieved it. That's how it's mine. What's yours is yours. It's your fault. You didn't work as hard as me, or whatever. So that's why it's yours.
But if it's midat chasidut, then average isn't average.
Okay, good question, good point. So let's see. Ve'yesh oimrim, and then there's a view that says zoi midas stoim, that this is the characteristics of the people of Sodom. Nobody wants to be in that classification. Right? Nobody wants to be classified as somebody who is like the people of Sodom. Let's remind ourselves, what were the people of Sodom like? Totally unhospitable, right? In fact, to the extent that if a person in their society was hospitable, they would actually penalize the person for being hospitable. Why were they not hospitable? What's mine is mine, and what's yours is yours. So don't come knocking on my door and expect me to help you. What's mine is mine. So therefore, Yeshoimrim, some say this is Midas Sodom. Okay, that's our first category. Next category. Ha'oimer Sheli Sheloch. What is mine is yours. Let's pause at this moment. How does that sound? What is mine is yours. How does that sound?
Sharing.
Sounds like sharing, yes? What's mine is yours. But then they carry on and they say, Ve'sheloch sheli, and what is yours is mine.
No.
Now what does this sound like? Now that's like socialism, yes? What's mine is yours is mine, we're one big happy family, Except it's not that. It's not just simply saying we all share. It's saying specifically, what's mine is yours, and what's yours is mine. So what kind of a person is this? Harei zoi am haaretz. That is a person designated as an am haaretz. Now I'm deliberately not translating what am haaretz is, because the commentaries have a field day about this expression am haaretz in this Mishnah. Some of them use it as a highly critical term. Some of them use it as a very kind of ordinary term, and some of them even use it as a complimentary term. Have you ever heard am haaretz as a complimentary term? Never, right? You don't go over to somebody and say, you're such an am haaretz, and intend it complimentary. So it's strange that it might be seen as complimentary, but we'll see. Then ha'omer, the person who says sheli sheloch, mine is yours, ve'sheloch sheloch, and yours is yours. What is that? Is a chassid. That's a chassid. What's the definition of a chassid? The Barat Tanura tells us an individual who lives beyond the requirements of the law. Because to say that mine is somebody else's and theirs is definitely beyond the requirements even of the Torah itself. So we have to analyze that. And then the last one is Ha'omer Sheli, Sheli, mine is mine, Veshelach Sheli, and yours is mine, Harei Zoi Rasha. Well, that's obviously a bad person, right? That's a bad person. Okay, so is there anything at all about this Mishnah that jumps out at you right at the beginning, before we start breaking it down? Anything at all? About anything? There may not be, but I'm just curious if there's anything about this Mishnah that leaps out at you and says, well, hang on a second, pay attention. What does this mean?
Can you just classify into such a few little
categories? Okay, fair question. How can you divide people into 4 categories? But the truth is, if you divide people into 4 categories, that may even be more than you would have expected. Very often people are split into 2 categories, black and white. So this is a little bit more specific.
It seems to refer to materialistic things.
Okay. So how do you know it's referring to materialistic things?
Well, it doesn't mean
it seems, right? It seems.
Yeah.
But it's not necessarily obvious in the Mishnah.
It sounds like a person who's very balanced.
Which one is balanced?
The chosed one.
The chassid doesn't sound balanced to me.
Oh, that's what I'm trying to say. Here is somebody who's got the person who's actually knows his place and can share.
Right.
So he is loving his fellow Jew as well, but he's also valuing himself.
So that's not the chassid.
Oh, isn't it?
Because the chassid says, mine is yours. So the chassid doesn't sound like it's somebody who values his own, so to speak, rights or portion, etc. Okay, so the thing that should catch our attention in this Mishnah is we're saying that there are 4 kinds of people, and then we define those people by, look what the Mishnah says, ha'omer, by what they say. Isn't that interesting? Because let's be honest, when we first read this Mishnah, we actually thought it was a definition of what they do. So there's the person who shares with others, there's the person who says mine is mine, so they obviously don't share. There's a person who wants what somebody else has. It's interesting that the entire Mishnah is actually about what they say. That implies that what they say and what they do may actually be different, and we're defining the people by what they say. That's fascinating, so we've got to explore that. The other thing is, there's still a Mishnah coming in a few Mishnahs' time that says, Arba midos benoisnei tzedakah, that there are 4 different types of personalities when it comes to giving tzedakah. So if that later Mishnah is talking about tzedakah, almost all of the Mefarshim say that this Mishnah is not talking about tzedakah. So if it is not talking about tzedakah, what is it talking about? So that's another interesting thing that we have to explore in this Mishnah. And then let's remind ourselves that this is Pirkei Avos. And we've already multiple times quoted the Gemara in Bava Kama that says that if a person wants to be a chassid, live beyond the letter of the law, then they should learn Mili da Avos. They should learn what it says in Pirkei Avos. In other words, Pirkei Avos is not the area of Torah that tells us black and white law. It's the area of Torah that tells us how to live beyond the requirement of the law. If that is the case, we're going to have some serious questions on this Mishnah. Number 1, according to the law, are you allowed to give everything away? No. The chassid says, Sheli, Shelach, everything of mine is yours. Well, is that actually acceptable? No. Okay. Number 2, if we're talking about midas chasidus, people who are beyond the letter of the law, how is there Russia in the mixture of an audience who's living beyond the letter of the law? In other words, if we're now telling you how to go beyond halacha, the implication is you must already be keeping halacha. If you're already keeping halacha, how can you be a Rasha? How's that even an option? So that's an interesting question, right? Then we have to examine, is there a debate happening in the first scenario between one opinion that says, if you say mine is mine and yours is yours, that one view calls that average and the other view calls that Sodoim. So it sounds like they're debating each other, right? Sounds like they're very different opinions. How could you have such diverse opinions about character? You know, if you're having a debate whether something is kosher or not kosher, we get it. because there's an argument why it would be kosher or permitted, and an argument why it would be not kosher or forbidden. But here we're talking about character. So this is what precipitates this debate as to if this character is average and acceptable, or if this character is terrible. It's Sodom behavior. Okay, so these are the things we have to explore. So let's try to go through them step by step. And what we're going to do is we'll examine a little bit of the psychology of the people we're talking about. And then, please God, once we've done that, we can examine a little bit of the spirituality of the people that we're talking about, which is really where it gets a lot more interesting. So let's start off with the person who says, Sheli, Sheli, what is mine, Vesheloch, Sheloch, and what is yours. Almost all of the Mefarshim on this Mishnah, because as I mentioned, there's already another Mishnah coming up that speaks about tzedakah. So almost all of the Mefarshim say we're either discussing business conduct or what is called gemilus chasadim, which of course is different to tzedakah. Tzedakah is very financial. Gemilus chasadim could be in various ways. So to extend chesed to a person could be money, it could be time, it could be resources, etc. Tzedakah is only directed at a person who is needy, whereas Gemilas Chasadim, you could do chesed even to a person who is wealthy, because chesed is not filling a lack materially. It could be all kinds of interactions. That said, there are still some of the Mefarshim who believe this is talking about tzedakah, so we might pop into one or two of their views as well while we're doing it. So the person who says, Sheli, Sheli, Vesheloch, Sheloch. Let's work out what's going on over here. So what's mine is mine, and what's yours is yours. The person who says that is effectively saying, I don't want responsibility for you. That's what they're saying. Sheli, Sheli. My business is my business. Sheloch, Sheloch. Your business is your business. I don't want responsibility for you. You know, there's a number of stories that illustrate this point, but there's some very disturbing stories that have happened in recent years where in areas where they have a lot of CCTV footage. For example, there was a particular incident that happened a number of years ago in a particular part of New York where a young boy was abducted. And essentially what happens is there's this period of time where this child is on the street and he'd obviously become separated from his mother or something like that, or he was walking home, he didn't know, it got lost, whatever it was, and you see on the CCTV how many people walked past without even stopping to assist this child, until unfortunately the person who did stop was the wrong person. That is very much our society. Sheli, Sheli, Sheloch, Sheloch. I don't want to get involved. Let's be honest. If you're driving and you see a car stuck on the side of the road,
Say not my problem.
what are the chances? What are the chances that you're actually going to pull over? Especially in this country where, you don't even know if it's for real. For all you know, it's some kind of a ploy. But in other parts of the world too, Sheli, Sheli, Vesheloch, Sheloch. You may have seen a much more heartwarming example. So one of the talk show hosts in America a few years ago did an experiment on Hollywood Boulevard, where they had, they have all these people who walk around in all kinds of costumes depicting the various TV characters. So the one person who was obviously part of their team, and they had hidden cameras all over, was wearing one of these big oversized costumes and fell down, like made as if he had tripped and fallen down and couldn't get up because of the bulky costume. And they had the cameras running with a timer to see how long it would take before the first person would come past and help this individual to get up. And it's I don't know, it was like 7 minutes or something ridiculous, like a long period of time. Until eventually there were some frum kids walking past, and they helped this guy up. And it was a tremendous Kiddush Hashem, because it was on national TV, and here were these frum children who helped the guy get up. But the point is that the average person in our society is kind of trained to say, Sheli, Sheli, what's my business is my business. Sheloch, Sheloch, your business is your business. I don't need to get involved. It's not a tzedakah question. This is an attitudinal question. So, harei zo midah beinonis. That is, back then, in the time of the Mishnah, that is the average behavior of people. It's not that just because we live in the 21st century, we've become altogether desensitized. That is the average behavior of people, to say, it's not my problem. It's not my business.
It's hard to live like that.
It's very hard to live like that. That's how people live. Right? That is the vast majority.
You think
The
so?
positive side to it as well is like not getting involved in people's business when you don't need to be.
Absolutely, absolutely. Absolutely. So there's a positive, exactly. And that's why we can say that it's midah beinonis, that it's an average behavior, because it's not all bad. There are things that we should say, it's not for me to get involved. I shouldn't interfere. I shouldn't stick my nose in other people's business. And I want to add another layer to that. Sometimes it's important for a person to know that I shouldn't allow myself to become enmeshed in something that isn't mine. So that's why midah beinonis. It's not criticized. It's the average behavior.
Because in this country, it's more the safety aspect. You can't stop to help too many people like we see them on the foot. But you'd like to help, but sometimes you are just the context of where you live. Like you can't-
Fine. So I think we'll all accept that in certain societies, in certain areas within certain societies, you know that there's a higher risk if you were, to stop and get involved. Fair enough. That's what I'm saying. Midah beinonis. That the simplest way that we can understand this is it's an acceptable way to behave. It's the way societies behave. Ve'yesh oimrim, and yet at the same time, there's an opinion that says that this is midas Sodom. Why? So do you remember the story of Sodom? Remember Abraham went, I'm saying before the destruction of Sodom. What's the original story that we're told about Sodom? Is Abraham has a nephew called Lot. Lot moves to Sodom. Not a great move. Doesn't work out that well for him, and he gets caught up in this massive war, and he's taken captive, and Avram Avinu goes to save him, and while doing so, he rescues all the other captives of Sodom as well. Straight after that, the king of Sodom comes to Avram, and he says, Ten li hanefesh, give me the people, v'harachosh kach loch, and you take the assets, whatever bounty they had retrieved in this war. What's he saying? Sheli, Sheli. The people are mine. They're people from Sodom. So therefore, what is mine, I want to take back. Shelach, Shelach, you risk your life on their behalf. You deserve some kind of compensation. Therefore, you take the items, right? You take the stuff. So that's actually where the Mishnah gets this from. Not necessarily from the story of, how Sodom used to behave with people and say that you're not allowed to help them, etc. It's actually kind of an acceptable perspective, right? The king says, I want my people back and you can have the assets. Sounds okay. Sounds okay. But quite a number of the Mefarshim point out that this Yesh Oimrim is not debating the original opinion. Instead, it's telling us that it's what we call a slippery slope. When people adopt an attitude that says, Sheli, Sheli, Veshelach, Shelach, we each live as an island, and I don't have to get involved, and I don't have to step up and help somebody out, or whatever the case is, because my stuff is my stuff and your stuff is your stuff. So there's a big disclaimer, a big warning label that comes with that. Before you know it, that could become midas Sodom, because that's the story of Sodom. The story starts with the leader, the king, saying, what's mine is mine, ten li hanefesh, give me the people. And what's yours is yours, v'arachush kach loch, and you take the money. It all sounds equitable. Fast forward a few years, and what do you have? You have a society where nobody is willing to help another person. That's the big warning of this Mishnah. Don't land up being satisfied with the mine is mine and the yours is yours, because it can unravel.
Actually selfish.
Can become, it's not totally selfish, can become. So, right, it's not selfish, it's equitable. It can become selfish. That's the point. Now let's look at the next one. The person who says, Sheli, Shelach, Veshelach, Sheli. What's mine is yours, and what's yours is mine. Now, isn't that strange? Let's understand what goes through the mind. What is the psychology of a person who says that what's mine is yours, and what's yours is mine?
You've got better than I have.
Aha. The psychology implies that there's something you have that I want that I don't have. In other words, it implies that there's an element of envy in this relationship. So I'm willing to give you what I have, but my motivation is to get what you have. Sheli Shelach, I am willing to contribute. On condition, Shelach Sheli, that you'll compensate me back. This is what we call an Am Haaretz. Now, there are various ways that you could define Am Haaretz. Quite a few of the Mefarshim say in this context, And Am Haaretz is not supposed to be translated like we normally translate Am Haaretz. Usually Am Haaretz is a disparaging term. Usually an Am Haaretz is somebody who's disqualified from certain halachic positions because they just simply are not learned, aware, or observant. So, for example, you don't trust an Am Haaretz that they took the Truma and Maisa that they were supposed to take from their produce, as an example. That's not the Am Haaretz we're talking about over here. So if we're not going to use that term, let's try and find a new term. Let's be as close to a literal translation as possible. Am Haaretz. How would you translate it?
People of the land.
People of the earth. People of the earth, right? People of the land. You could use that word. Am Haaretz. What does it mean, Am Haaretz? These are people whose motivation is to keep the society functional. Because as opposed to the previous group, they believe that everybody lives in their own little cluster. Sheli, Sheli, and that's it. Shelach, Shelach, and that's it. There's no crossover, there's no cross-pollination. You can never have a society that exists without people being willing to connect. Can't happen. So even though it's midah beinonis and it's very normal, etc., it's not healthy. You know, I don't want to get too technical, but you might have heard the principle that says that Hashem was boine oilamos umachrivan. Ever heard this? That before Hashem created the world, He created other worlds and He destroyed them. Now it's a very cryptic midrash. What do you mean Hashem created worlds and then He destroyed them? Well, if He intended to destroy them, why did He create them? And it's not like you could say He created them and then He realized He made a mistake, so He decided to destroy them. So in Kabbalah, there's a whole deep explanation about what this means, and effectively it describes that there are parallel realities. The higher reality is a world called Toihu, which is a world of chaos, and our reality is a world called Tikkun, which is a world of order. What makes the chaos in the world of chaos is that every energy that exists, what we would call the Sephiros, exists in isolation. It won't engage and interact with the other energies, with the other Sephiros. So therefore the world is always in a state of destruction. So Sheli, Sheli, Shelach, Shelach, that is not a society that can endure. Whereas Am Haaretz, a person who has the interest, by this definition of Am Haaretz, the person has the interest in a sustainable society, realizes that I have to be able to give you something, and you have to be able to give me something, and then we can engage. And then we can actually have a society that works. So that's why the Am Haaretz over here, this is not the Am Haaretz normally, this is Mili de Chasidusa. Here we're talking about people who are beyond the requirement of the law. So we're not addressing a person who's an Am Haaretz because they don't keep the law. They don't belong in this Mishnah. We're talking about people who actually want to somehow bring a sustainable society together. And that's why there's something quite positive in this person's attitude, because first they say, Sheli Shelach. Their first principle is, let me share with somebody else. And only after that, then they have an expectation in return, Shelach Sheli, once I'm helping you, please reciprocate and help me as well. Which is the other reason that this person is called an Am Haaretz. Because whether you like it or not, you cannot escape the fact that Am Haaretz usually implies somebody who has an ignorant or foolish attitude in life. You know what's unfortunately common but foolish? Is the belief that if we do something, we can control the outcome and response that we'll get from the person we do it for. That's exactly what this individual wants to do. Sheli Shelach, I am willing to share with you. And then I have an expectation, Shelach Sheli, that you're going to reciprocate. Now you know what expectations do. The leading cause of disappointment is expectation. So when a person does something good for somebody else, but their motivation for doing that good is because they then believe that they'll get something from that individual in return, that is a foolish attitude. So we call this person Am Haaretz. It's ridiculous, it's ignorant to believe that because you've done right makes it the responsibility of the other person to do right in return.
And that's why actually serving the deceased is such a great mitzvah, I would think.
Correct, because you do something for the deceased you can't get in return. But over here, what he's telling us is implied in this particular message, we shouldn't be doing things for other people based on an expectation. We should be doing things for other people because we do things for other people. Because it's the right thing to do. I heard a really good line recently, and right now I can't remember who said it, but effectively the line was, I don't serve the people, I serve the purpose. In other words, I'm not here to make relationships and do the right thing because then somebody's going to appreciate me. I do it because it's the right thing. Or as the Rambam puts it, Oise es ha'emes mipnei shehu emes. That you do what is true because it is true. And then he says, V'soif ha'toiva lavoi, and there'll always be a benefit from doing what is true. But your motivation is not to get something in return. So the Amoritz, that's their reality. They say, I have to do something so that I'll get something in return. We say, well, unfortunately, that's actually not going to work. Or it's not guaranteed to work. Let's put it that way. Obviously, sometimes people will reciprocate, but it's not guaranteed to work. Next person we have is the Chassid. What does the Chassid say? Sheli sheloch, v'sheloch sheloch. What is mine is yours, and what is yours is yours. Hang on a second, Chassid, we have an halachic issue with you. What's the halachic issue? Who knows? There's a big halachic issue. You're not permitted to give away more than 20% of your assets to tzedakah. How can this person say, Sheli shelach, everything of mine is yours? So let's just test that for a second. Did he say everything of mine is yours? There's no word kol in that sentence. The expression is Sheli shelach, what is mine is yours. Veshelach shelach, and what is yours is yours. What does that mean? So anybody who's ever had to help somebody else, whether it's an actual handout where you've given a person tzedakah, or if you've had to help somebody else in any other fashion, sometimes it can be a very uncomfortable experience. It can be uncomfortable for you to have to reach out to somebody and do it in a dignified manner, and it can be very uncomfortable for them because to be a recipient is never easy, no matter what it's a recipient of. If it's financial, if it's emotional, if it's time, whatever it is, nobody really wants to be on the receiving end. Now, the worst thing that can happen when a person helps somebody out is if they remind them all the time of how they helped them. And if you've ever been in that position where somebody's done something for you and then they consistently remind you of how good they were to you, then you'll appreciate how deeply uncomfortable that becomes.
It's the same when you're becoming from. Like you're from and you're trying to be a certain, and everyone reminds you how you were before you were.
Okay, so that's
It's like a different thing, but
it's a little different because there people are reminding you of you. It's equally uncomfortable. Here we're talking about somebody reminding you of what they did for you. So just to tweak that example, the person who becomes from, and then they have that one wonderful individual who feels that they always have to announce in public, I'm the one who made you from. Right? Remember, that first Shabbos you ever had was in my house. Right? Like that kind of thing. So what the Chassid gets right is that balance. You can't, even though we're talking over here about going beyond the letter of the law, at the end of the day, you can't go against the law. Right? Going beyond the letter of the law does not mean going against the halacha. So if the halacha is that you can't give more than a certain amount, you can't give more than a certain amount, that's it. So what is the Chassid doing? The Chassid takes this attitude. Sheli, sheloch. What I'm giving you is already yours. It's not me giving my thing to you, whether my thing is money, time, emotional support, advice, doesn't matter. I'm not giving you mine that I can then continue to lay claim to it for who knows how many years. You still have my thing I gave you, my investment in your business, my advice that saved your life, my emotional support that helped you when you were in crisis. Sheli, what I'm giving you, sheloch, it is yours. It's like the attitude of Meiser, right? When it comes to Meiser, we're supposed to give 10% of tzedakah, 10% of our income to tzedakah. So the attitude is that 10% isn't mine. It's already shelach. It already belongs to the other person or the other recipients. That's who it belongs to. Sheli, even though it's in my purvey, it belongs to me, it's actually yours. Therefore, shelach, when I give it to you, I never again see it as attached to me. Shelach, I've given it to you, it is yours. It is now completely independent of me. And so you should never feel in any way uncomfortable, like I'm always claiming that you have of mine. That's a chassid. Right? Sheli, shelach, v'shelach, shelach. If it's yours, it is absolutely yours. I literally cut my personal ties, so I'm not invested in your success or your growth going further. I'm out. You're now the success story.
That's the laws of charity as well.
This is not charity. Remember, there's another Mishnah that's talking about tzedakah. This is the Mishnah that's talking about how we gemilas chasadim.
Yeah, but even that
Right?
is a kind of charity to do something for someone.
Right. 100%. But let's be clear. This is not halacha, right? Halacha says if you give tzedakah to somebody else and you have a poor attitude, it's still tzedakah. This is beyond the letter of the law. This is telling us that the ultimate way in which to give, whether it be giving tzedakah, whether it be giving kindness, whether it be giving advice, whether it be giving support, whatever it is, should be in such a way that the person does not feel any sense of discomfort because I was their benefactor. That's what the chassid wants to teach us. Now the Rasha is possibly the most self-explanatory, except that the Rasha doesn't seem to fit into the world of Chassidus. How could you be a Rasha? So let's look at it in its simplest form. That will round off the psychology of each of the four groups, and then we'll go back to the spirituality of each of the four groups. So the psychology of the Rasha is, I live for me. And therefore, whatever's out there, I'm going to look to take advantage of whatever's out there and capitalize on it for me. So sheli, whatever I have, that's for me. Shelach, whatever you have, sheli is also for me. That's their attitude at face value. The attitude of the Rasha at face value is somebody who does not want to contribute to the values of society, to the benefit of other people, but expects that all of society will add value to them. We call this in the modern world entitlement. All right, somebody believes, I don't have to do anything, I don't have to contribute, but society owes me something. That's exactly it. Sheli, whatever I get is mine, v'shelach sheli, and you have to give to me as well. So you've got to support my habit, or you've got to give me free whatever. That's the attitude of sheli, and shelach sheli. Possibly out of the four, this may be the most prevalent in modern life, is the sense of entitlement, that people believe things are coming to them. Now the thing is this, like I said at the beginning, this is mili de chasidusa. While all of that is valid and all of these things are actual reflections on different groups and different personalities, at the end of the day, this is mili de chasidusa. This is Pirkei Avos, that is supposed to be teaching us how you live beyond the basics, how you live beyond the obvious. There's no question about it that you don't need Pirkei Avos to tell you that somebody who is absolutely self-centered and says everything is mine and yours is mine, is an unhealthy mindset. So what's going on over here? Let's look at this from a different perspective, just in terms of midas hachasidus. I mentioned to you right at the beginning that the key word over here is what they say. So the Mishnah is emphasizing the way a person speaks, which may be different to the way the person behaves. So we'll look at this in two cases. We'll look at this in the case of the chassid, and we'll look at this in the case of the Rasha. By way of introduction, I believe it's the Abarbanel who says this Mishnah effectively describes two extreme positions and two average positions. So the chassid and the Rasha are the two extreme positions, and the so-called Beinoni and the Am Haaretz are the two kind of medium positions. So we're going to look at the two extreme positions to understand what this means in Mili de Chasidusa. So in order to be mentioned in a Mishnah that is talking about people who are going beyond the letter of the law, the expectation is you're already following the law. So if the law requires that you have to help somebody, whether that is tzedakah, whether it is gemilas chasadim, or whatever, because there are halachas about these things, not only about tzedakah, right? There's an halachic guide to how you help people in other ways as well. So here you're talking about somebody who's actually helping the other person. But oimer, while they're helping them, they are telling them, sheli, sheli, vesheloch, sheli. In other words, the whole attitude that they create while they're doing the positive is a very clear sense of, you better know who's doing the positive. Sheli, sheli, it's all about me. Sheloch, whatever I'm giving you, sheli, is mine. So that's where this gets into midas hachasidus, because halachically, the person is giving, delivering what they should deliver. But how they're wording it, ha'oimer, what they're saying is the problem. They're saying, I'm willing to help you, as long as you always remember who helped you. So almost the exact opposite of what we were saying before. Right? The chassid is the person who says, Shalach, it's yours. I don't want to interfere in your life. Well, the Rasha is saying, I want you always to remember. Right? I want you always. That's a Rasha in context of midas chasidus. It's not a Rasha in context of halacha. In the context of halacha, this person's doing what they should. But if you want to say from a higher grade perspective, this person is well off the mark because of how they speak. And the opposite, well, the opposite extreme is the chassid. What does the chassid say? Ha'omer sheli sheloch v'sheloch sheloch. There's a little book. It's called the Hayom Yom. It's a publication that the Lubavitcher Rebbe produced before he became Rebbe. And it's got a little thought for every day of the week, for the whole year. So last week, there was an entry in the Hayom Yom that goes as follows. The early Hasidim, meaning to say, in the modern Hasidic time, the early Hasidim used to say, this piece of bread is yours as it is mine. And they always made sure to say yours before they said mine. What does that mean? Well, let's try and imagine, what was life like in the time of the early Hasidic movement in the 18th and 19th century? There were no Jews living in 4-bedroom houses with gardens and solar panels and 2 cars. You know, the people, it was, for the vast majority of people, they lived hand to mouth. So when somebody says to his friend, this piece of bread is yours as it is mine, he may still be unable to give the whole piece of bread to his friend, because he also has to survive. He may have to break that bread in half. But his attitude is, what he's saying is, I want you to know that as far as I care and as far as I see it, it's sheli sheloch. If I have something, it is yours. If I don't have something, I may not be able to give you. Even if I can't give you, at least I can tell you, sheli sheloch, that what I have is yours. In other words, unfortunately, often when people are in need, they'll go to individuals, and individuals will tell them things like, it's been a rough month, can't give right now, I'm tapped out, I've already given so many people. Now those things which are all acceptable because they're real. The midas chasidus is to say, sheli sheloch. It's not a question of, I don't have the resources. It's, I don't have the resources, but whatever I have is yours. You need to know I'm here for you. That's oimer. It's not about what the person does. They can't do. They don't have resources. And yet they still say, sheli sheloch. We're in this together. Whatever I will have, I will definitely share with you. So that's like already, a different perspective to just simply saying, well, halacha does not require me to do anything under these circumstances because chayecha koidmin, I have to look after myself. And then let's take it one layer deeper to round off this Mishnah. We're taught that inside of ourselves, there are actually 2 forces that pull against each other. We typically like to call them the Yetzer Tov and the Yetzer Hara, but the truth is that the Yetzer is not a part of us. A Yetzer is an inclination, right? An inclination is not a part of us. The parts within ourselves are what we call a Nefesh Elokis, a divine soul, which we all call the Neshama. And then we also have what is called Nefesh HaBasar, as the Torah describes it in Parashas Achrei Mos, Or as in Hasidus we call it the nefesh habahamis, the animal soul. So nefesh habasa means the soul of the flesh, meaning to say it's the part of us that lives for the physical. So the neshama lives for connection to Hashem, and the nefesh habahamis lives for the physical. Does that make it bad? No. If you didn't have a nefesh habahamis, you wouldn't have the interest in eating, in self-preservation, in having children, etc. So now there are 4 possibilities of how a person sees the balance between those two souls. Possibility number 1 is Sheli, Sheli, Vesheloch, Sheloch. Let's make a truce. You don't bother me, I won't bother you. In other words, I'm going to invest in my neshama. That's what I care about. I'm going to become a better Jew. I'm going to learn more, do more mitzvahs, help other people, do all the things that the Torah expects of me. But Sheloch, you want to also be able to wear nice clothes and drive a nice car and eat good food. Gesundheit. Sheli, Sheli, I will focus on spiritual development. Sheloch, Sheloch, and I'll also make sure that you are cared for.
Like a from person in fur, what is that?
From in fur, I like that. We could start a group called From in Fur. Right? So there you have it, right? So the person, Sheli, Sheli, what I invest in my neshama will be for the neshama. Vesheloch, Sheloch, and what I invest in my animalistic side will be for the animal. And that's how we will keep the peace and be a well-rounded, healthy, religious, observant Jewish person. Says the Mishnah, Harezoi mida beinonis. That's a very average way to behave. It's average. Why is that only average? Because the objective of being Jewish is not only to protect our spiritual assets, but to also make an impact on the material world and turn that into something holy as well. That's why we have every mitzvah is tethered to a physical action, because the objective is to take the physical world with us for the ride. So therefore it's called Midah Beinonis. It's an average way to serve Hashem. What's a more advanced way to serve Hashem? Sheli, Sheloch, Vesheloch, Sheli. Sheli, my neshama, Sheloch is going to get involved in your reality. My neshama is going to have a voice in how we conduct ourselves in the physical world. So we're not going to say, I'm just religious in shul, but I'll eat kosher obviously, but boy, will I eat when I eat kosher. No, I'm going to have a voice. The neshama is going to step in over there and say, hang on a second, why are we eating? Why are we doing these things? Are they really important? How do we make them holy? And in doing so, Sheloch, Sheli, some of your reality, animal side, will become part of my reality, will start to become holy. That's the goal. That's the goal. The goal is to actually get that animal drive aligned with what Hashem wants. Sheloch, Sheli. I need you to come in and be part of my objective in life. That person is called Am Haaretz. Remember, in this Mishnah, we're using Am Haaretz as possibly even a complementary term. Am Haaretz means, in this context, somebody who cares about the Aretz, about the material, being part of the journey. So their goal is not just to have a shining neshama. Their goal is to have a shining world that they live in. Am Haaretz. They want to make a difference to the world itself. A chassid is somebody who says, why do I have a personal interest in this? I'm not here to serve me. Even the personal interest of transforming my own animal side and the material world that I live in to be aligned with Hashem, even that is personal. So the chassid says, Sheli, Sheloch, Vesheloch, Sheloch. In this case, if we were to translate it in English, what's mine is yours with a capital Y. Sheloch is referring to Hashem. I am here to do what Hashem wants. Vesheloch, Sheloch, and obviously what Hashem expects is what Hashem wants. In other words, I don't have the need for personal fulfillment. I don't need to walk out of here knowing that I achieved this, transformed that, secured my place in Olam Haba or whatever. It's got nothing to do with that. Sheli, my whole purpose is Sheloch, to be yours. That's my purpose, to be yours, to be dedicated to you. So whatever the outcome of that will be is your business. Sheloch, Sheloch. How it all looks at the end is not my concern, and it's not my personal interest. I just need to know that I'm a servant of Hashem. That's all that counts. The expression that they use is Ilu nitztavinu lachtov eitzim. That if Hashem had instructed us to chop trees, then we'd chop trees. Okay, it's not so fulfilling and it's not spiritually enriching, but sheli sheloch, I'm here to do what you want. The Rasha, remember this is a Rasha in the context of Mili de Chasidusa. The Rasha is somebody who says, no. Sheli, v'shelach sheli. If I'm going to do something about my Judaism, there's got to be a payoff for me. If I don't see a payoff for me, if it's not talking to me, if it's not filling me, if it's not rewarding me, if it's not adding to my life, I'm not doing it. So that's why we call this a Rasha. Not a Rasha in the sense of somebody who breaks Judaism. This is somebody who observes Judaism. But in the context of Mili, the Chasidusa, this is a Rasha because their whole motivation is me. And really that's, as we said before, the two extremes. The ultimate is everything should be about Hashem. And the lowest form of avodah is everything is about the what's in it for me. Okay, we'll leave it there for now.